All of this stuff that's been presented around this Isaac case and these drones, it's all very interesting, but all of this hinges on the testimony of some guy named Isaac. I need some kind of evidence to support this, and I think we'd have to investigate this further to really know if any of this is true.
Is this real or is it a hoax?
Just remember
The search for the truth only adds more layers to the enigma. These photographs, reportedly shot over California in 2007, show craft possibly reverse engineered by our government from captured alien technology. Although the Carrick documents allege that reverse engineering is being subcontracted out to private facilities, most UFO researchers believe that if it's taking place, it's being done at high-security military bases.
Coming up with a lot of documents here about underground bases and their connection to reverse engineering.
The file includes a declassified, formerly top-secret 1952 briefing prepared for incoming President Dwight Eisenhower.
This says top secret, eyes only. It's prepared for President-elect Eisenhower, and it goes on to say that the Roswell crash was real, and the wreckage of the craft was removed to several different locations, one of them possibly Area 51.
Two names have become synonymous with reverse engineering: Dulce Mesa, New Mexico, and Area 51. A number of scientists and engineers who worked at Area 51 reported suspicious activity at the site.
Robert Lazar supposedly was one of the people who was asked by the Air Force to go to Area 51 and give his advice on how to reverse engineer the propulsion systems of all the craft that were kept at Area 51.
Bob Lazar surfaced in the early 1990s, claiming to have been an engineer who worked at Area 51, supposedly reverse engineering captured UFOs.
Here's a story about a guy named Bill Uhouse, who is a retired mechanical engineer from Vegas, who claims he worked with an EBE, an extraterrestrial biological entity.
Right.
Another purported base involved with reverse engineering is located underneath the town of Dulce, New Mexico.
Dulce is a very secret military base that is underground. According to the United States Army's own mining engineers, this is the most heavily tunneled area in the entire world. That ever since the late 1940s, we've dug tunnels in all these states. Dulce is one of those tunnels.
I know that there are bases that are tunneled deep into the ground for their protection so that they can survive, let's say, a nuclear attack. But are there these secret underground bases where reverse engineering vehicles? That I can't say for sure.
A subject surrounded by secrecy is always an easy target for hoaxers. And digital image manipulation has made their job easier than ever, which isn't to say that the photographs aren't real. Ted meets with computer graphics specialist Phil Crescenzo at his studio in Agora, California, to analyze the drone photographs.
The light for these objects appears to be coming from this angle.
Right.
You know, I'm not sure that that's the same angle that the light for the telephone pole. If anything, I would say that it's deceptive.
Phil has noticed that all the photographs show the craft moving toward or away from a wooded area, but never over it.
None of these shots really have the ship behind woods, where you would think someone, if they saw a craft like this, would be shooting constantly, and one or two of these shots would have it behind a lot more foliage. It's much easier to make a composite when you have all these straight lines, and for instance, if you were to try to put this craft behind a number of leaves, and I noticed that in this whole sequence of images, there are none where the craft is behind anything.
You know, either it's a really, really well-crafted hoax or a real image. It leaves me wondering, you know, what would it take to create these kinds of fake photos?
You remember the frame that I told you to look?
This shot.
This is it right here. I shot it yesterday, and I left a nice spot for me to put something into that frame. I just did a quick approximation of what the lighting might be for this shot and rendered a 3D object out. If I just bring the object in and lay it in the shot, we get a pretty stark image here.
To my eye, it seems clear the object's just stuck on there.
Stuck on there. So the first thing, I would render it with some motion blur. Even objects that are moving fairly slow should have some motion blur on them.
Does a blur occur on the drone photos?
It's sort of one thing that I feel like I'm missing when I look at these photos is a little bit of motion blur. I don't see any rotation. I see no motion blur at all. It appears to be stationary, and that conflicts with the fact that the craft is moving across those telephone wires and moving across some of these parts of this scene. Now, the only thing that this is missing to sort of fit into the shot is to have the grain from the background applied back onto the ship.
Right.
I mean, look at that.
Yeah, it definitely looks a lot better after you've applied those effects.
Exactly.
It's impressive. I mean, you've got it, to my eye, looking like maybe 99% believable that there's a UFO flying in your front yard.
But you can see how someone with even more time would probably be able to create a very convincing image.
After all of this analysis, what is it? Is this real or is it a hoax?
I would tend to go with this being a computer-generated image.
At the end of the day, we weren't able to prove that these were fakes or hoaxed. On the other side, we weren't able to prove that they were real. I'm not sure it's possible to do that. And bottom line, I'm just not going to believe that we're seeing a real UFO solely based on a set of images.
If the Carrot photos and documents are fakes, they are extremely good ones. Somebody has spent hours creating and detailing these documents. Why?
Why are all the photo witnesses anonymous? Nobody's come forward. We have no identifiable person who says, I've taken these photos.
So this whole thing smells like a hoax?
Read in between the lines here. And at the top of my list is disinformation.
Okay.
Are they trying to hide real alien technology? Are they trying to hide that we've been visited by extraterrestrials? Or are they just simply trying to hide a super secret weapon? But for me, the bottom line is there is a secret here that's being protected, it's being cloaked, and that's what MUFON's here to find out, what that secret is.
It's a matter of record that revolutionary forms of aircraft have been attempted in the years after World War II.
Rather than reverse engineer alien technology, most companies all the way back in the 1950s simply created their own technology from scratch.
In 1953, Avro Canada demonstrated Project Y2.
Yes, a genuine flying saucer.
The Avro car was an 18-foot saucer that used a turbo rotor for upward propulsion. But even after spending millions of dollars in research and development, the craft could hover only up to 8 feet at a maximum speed of 20 knots. Other disc-shaped craft all proved unstable, unflyable, and dangerous. But one man claims to have helped build a successful flying disc, not for any government, but for a private organization in Oklahoma.
I had an experience on board this 45-foot craft.
Ralph Ring is a technician who worked closely in the 1950s and 60s with Otis Carr, an inventor who claimed to be a protege of Nikola Tesla. Carr believed he could build a working flying disc, and Ralph Ring asserts they succeeded.
Ralph, how did you meet Otis T. Carr?
A friend of mine introduced me to a group called Understanding that was studying stuff like science. They brought Carr and his entourage out, and we got up there and brainstormed, and we decided to get together and build spaceships.
1958, Oklahoma. Otis Carr starts construction of the OTC-X-1, a 45-foot flying saucer. He describes his invention on Long John Neville's New York radio show in 1959.
We have a truly space vehicle that does not burn up its energy in a few seconds.